SIG leader of the Micro Focus Vivid Agile Special Interest Group. Today, we're excited to introduce Susan Dangelo, who's the Alliance Sales Engineer at Blueprint Software. And Susan is presenting on BusDevOps Cycle with Storyteller and Micro Focus ALM. This is one of our first webinars since I've become the SIG leader. Join the Vivid Agile SIG today if you're not a member. You can use this link. I'm an Enterprise Agile coach with Accenture and the Agile SIG leader. We're also looking for another co-leader. So if you're interested, you can contact me or Anna Marie. Again, Susan D'Angelo is joining us from New York with Blueprint Software. Susan was previously with Paychex, a payroll company, for 25 years, starting as a C++ and Java developer. Susan has had experience as a program manager and developer manager role, and chosen to manage Agile transformation and lead both Kanban and Agile teams. Some housekeeping. Today's live session is intended for all Vivid members. The recording will be posted afterwards on the Vivid website and visible for all members. The slide deck and webinar recording will be made available to you via email. To enlarge the presentation pane on your screen, just click on the rectangle in the upper right-hand corner of the presentation pane. If you have questions as we go along, please type and send them by using the Q&A pane. This pane is located on the left side of your screen. Simply type your question and then click on the Ask button. To ask a question and receive them in your native language, you can click on the flag icon and then choose your country's flag. So let's get started. So I'm going to pass it over to Susan, and she's going to go into Blueprint platform. And if you've been introduced to Blueprint at some point over time, Blueprint Software was a product that integrated very nicely with a number of products dealing with requirements, dealing with wireframes, and being able to do mock-ups. So filling in a huge gap in a lot of tools. And I'm really excited to introduce Susan, who's going to show us some of the latest and greatest features that now enable us to do even more within the Agile space.
Hello, everyone. So we have a couple of poll questions if you are so inclined to kind of answer some of these along the way. But, you know, we're looking to find out what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing today in Agile development. Maybe, you know, a lack of clearly defined user stories or business objectives, the need to have more and quicker stakeholder participation, maybe a lack of communication, especially with teams that are in different departments and or regions or time zones, information and business rules that are just too spread out to get the big picture or siloed, or maybe a lack of reuse, or the need to move so quickly is that it's faster to just write it yourself. And then maybe lastly, you know, no easy way and quick way to determine the impact of changes. And then finally, in your Agile development, you know, what is the quality of your user stories? Are they great, wonderful? Are they, just kind of okay? Or are you pulling your hair out? So those are some of the poll questions if you'd like to go ahead and answer them. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is give you an overview of Blueprint. So Blueprint is a company that's about 14 years old. We have over 180,000 users. We've had really rapid growth, 80% year-over-year growth. You can see we've been working with many, many different types of clients here. We have strategic partners across the globe, and we're working with over 70 plus Fortune 100 companies. And here's some feedback that we've gotten from some of our industry analysts. So not only do our clients think Blueprint and Storyteller are wonderful, but we're also getting that same feedback from the industry leaders here. So what does Blueprint and Storyteller do? Well, we provide you a platform to help large organizations build better business applications faster. And who is Blueprint for? So Blueprint is for anybody who needs to collaborate or provide feedback to your software development projects. So business analysts, product owners, SMEs, your partners, potentially, your Scrum Masters, your enterprise architects and solution architects, your business stakeholders, your compliance analysts. We want to make sure that we've got security engineers. Anyone can get into Blueprint and software and contribute into a project. And not only can they contribute, but if they need information, there's one place to go for all of the information that they need. So this is a high-level overview of our Blueprint Enterprise platform. And so essentially what we have here, Blueprint itself is made up of a set of core capabilities, and this is what we'll demonstrate during the demo. But essentially we've got a centralized repository, which is key. Again, like we said before, you've got, today a lot of information is siloed into different departments or different areas or different teams. With Blueprint, you have a centralized repository for all of the different business requirements, technical requirements, whatever you might want to store and be able to look at later to reference for your projects can be stored in one place. We have great visualization tools. So this is really key when you're defining your projects, especially within Agile when you're trying to move so rapidly. Those visualizations really help your teams hone in on what's important, and it helps them to think analytically as they're looking at those visualizations of the work. We have reuse capabilities. So, again, we not only allow you to reuse your artifacts, but we give you quick and easy ways to search for them, which is key. You don't have to look through different spreadsheets on SharePoint. Again, it's a quick search within the repository. We have great traceability and impact analysis. So again, here, that's so key, especially if you're doing anything with compliance. You need to have that traceability for your auditing. We give that to you. And also impact analysis. If you think about, especially with reuse, when you're reusing things, impact analysis and the ability to see, if I make a change here, what does it impact down the road is huge. And a lot of times what happens is that impact analysis is done by the developers who actually start coding. With Blueprint, you can actually move that way to the left and have your business analyst do that way ahead of time. And it saves a lot of time and effort. We've also got rapid review and approval capabilities. So we give you ways to get quick review within your team, and then we also give you ways to get more formal reviews, including e-signature. And then again, cross-company collaboration. So we give you several collaboration tools so that you're able to work with your teams in many different ways, even if they are spread across different regions or time zones. And again, so here we would support use cases, we support user stories, whatever you might need. And on top of all that, we have different ways that we can support you with analytics or prepackaged content that's already built in to help you jumpstart your projects. We also help with your test management, with test plan generation. And we have strong integrations with many different areas. So for example, here, we provide strong import capabilities for all of your Office documents that you have today. So if you want to, it's a little bit daunting to think about building up a repository from scratch, our import tools really allow you to do that very quickly. We also have this concept of a story scan that will allow you to take existing test plans and convert them into our Storyteller processes, which you'll see. And then as far as synchronization, so we can synchronize with your test management tools. We can also synchronize with your delivery management tools, so like HP ALM or Micro Focus ALM. And then on top of all that, we've got enterprise enablement. So, we've got teams to support you with our customer success team, our services team. We give you trainings, and we'll work with our partners to help you get the best products that you need, or the best support that you need. So why Blueprint? A lot of times we get these questions, or managers will ask themselves these questions. And a lot of times it can be done. It just sometimes takes a lot of extra time. With all of these, things like going to make a change, what will it impact? Who changed that requirement and why? Where are we on the sign-offs and so forth here? A lot of that can take some time, and you have to do some digging, maybe look through some emails or go and talk to some developers. But with Blueprint, it can be at just a click away. And finally, what we have here is a case study of a large financial institution that chose to implement Blueprint. They wanted to enforce the consistency of their requirements management practice across a bunch of different lines of business. So what we got here was a 53% reduction in requirement defects, which led to a 50% reduction in script creation effort, and an overall savings of 17%, which saved them $1.2 million. So again, very, very huge impact. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to jump actually into a demonstration of Storyteller, which we have here. So Storyteller is our platform that we use for agile development teams. And what we do here is we allow you to have on the left here a way to organize all of your different projects. So for example, I have my Aumenti banking project again, and I'm able to structure it so that I have folders to represent what's in production, what I might have at my portfolio level of all my unscheduled work, and then what I might have already in my program level, so things that I've already given to my teams that's in progress work. On top of that, I can have projects that can contain things like enterprise standards, so any compliance regulations I might need to adhere to, anything around security or NFRs, all can be stored here within our enterprise standards project. And we'll see that referenced in the demo. And so to start off with, what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a scenario from start to finish of what you might do for an initial release of what we're calling our Mobile Advisor app. And so what I have here is a portfolio epic, you can see, with some properties here. And I've kind of customized this to be in the safe format. But the great thing about Storyteller and Blueprint is any of these properties can be customized for whatever methodology or needs you might have. So here what we've got is the properties and then a business justification down here. And then we've actually got it tied and linked to our Mobile Advisor app Storyteller process. So again, we can jump right into this and see that we have what I'm going to call our 10,000-foot view. So what this is essentially is that high-level view of what we want to build out as our initial MVP. So one of the great things about the Storyteller process is you can come in here and your business stakeholders can come in here and they can actually come in and define the high-level pieces of functionality or capabilities that they might want to see. So in this case, what they really want to be able to do is view the marketing page, select a dashboard, select markets and commentary. So we've mapped that out very quickly. The other great thing we like to say about Storyteller is those visualizations are really key, again, in helping you define some gaps. So looking at this, obviously, you would never come into an application and then jump right into financial information. We're going to need to do a login. And so what we can do is I can show you how to quickly pull that in. Again, we're pulling in a high-level login process here, so we're keeping it very simple. But the great thing about this is, and I can switch this over to my Wealth Advisor Actor, is I can come in here and I can search for a login process. So if you think about it, a login process is something you're not going to want to define over and over again. It's something you probably want to, standardize and be consistent on. So with just a couple of clicks, I search for a login process and I actually pulled it into my Mobile Advisor app. And so now what I can do is I can click into this link and I can see that for this login process, I have a fully fleshed out process ready to go. Again, so I'm going to have this where my system's up and running, and then I have a few key user actions where maybe I want to start entering a user ID, or maybe I don't have an ID and I need to register, or maybe I just want to cancel out of this for now. So we can map out all those different actions. And then again, here what we can do is tie specific requirements around each of these different steps. So let's say for the user ID, I have a user ID policy where I'm defining the rules around what you can enter in for the user ID. A minimum of 8 characters, maximum of 20. Alphanumeric characters of mixed case are allowed. And then again, we can see that we can map out the process to move along. And then maybe when we get to password again, we've got a password policy that goes along with that. And so the thought here is, as you're pulling in this login process into my Mobile Advisor app process, I'm potentially pulling in all the existing code and tests that go along with that. And again, we've made it very easy to search for and reuse that login process you saw with a couple clicks. And so from here, once we've kind of pulled in this missing gap with the login, the next thing to think about is taking these high-level capabilities here, as we do with Epics, and start breaking them down. So our view marketing page, what we'd want to do then is take this, dive deeper into that, and start thinking about what do we want to do on our marketing page. And so initially what we might want to do is display our top 10 most recently viewed, and I can actually attach a mock-up of what we might want that to look like. So we can get these mock-ups from our UX teams. We can get them, from mock-ups that we've generated ourselves, maybe from other tools. Very simply take them and add them in here. And then what are the actions that we want the users to be able to do on this marketing page? So we have a couple here. We want them to be able to open an item. We want them to be able to search for content and select a presentation mode. And so if you can see here, this looks very different from what we had at the Mobile Advisor app. And that's because the Mobile Advisor app was in business process mode. And that's where we take out some of the noise about the system interactions because we just want to document those high-level capabilities. Again, which you can see here are high-level capabilities. But then we can turn on what we call our user system process mode as we start to decompose into those lower levels so that we're able to actually say for each individual task that we have here what that system response might be to those tasks. And so, for example, here we can take open an item. And one of the great things that Storyteller does for you, if you're in that agile transformation, for a lot of people that are new and going through the transformation, what we found is they really struggle with writing user stories. Sometimes they do it right, or a lot of people get very anxious about making sure it's in the right format. We give you what we call our guardrails around writing good user stories. And so what we do here is we just ask you for 3 key pieces of information. We want your actor. In this case, our Wealth Advisor. We want an action, which is open an item. And we want the objective here, which is display the content to the client. So with those 3 key pieces of information, and then we have a definition of this particular task. And then what we want to do is to define the system response to that task. And so what we have here, again, is a system actor, and this could be it's generic for this particular case, but it could be a database, it could be a messaging system, whatever you want that to be. And then our system response, which is displaying the item content. And again, we've got a visual to go along with that. And so what you would do for this particular process is go through and define all the different tasks and system responses. And then once you've done that, you could actually come up here and click Generate All. And it will generate the associated user stories for each of these individual tasks. We've got a little login task over here at the end, just want to show that. And so once you've done that, what will happen is this icon here will light up. And what you're able to do with that is actually call up in a visual way what this user story is going to do. And so what we have here is we're saying when we come in again, we're going to display the 10 most recently viewed. And then we're going to do our action of open an item. And so what we have here is that user story, again, that was generated off those 3 key pieces of information, if you remember. So we've got, as a Wealth Advisor, I want to open an item so that I can display the content to the client. And then we also have the acceptance criteria and the Gherkin format that was also automatically generated. And then over here, we've got the final response to that open an item task. And here's where we're going to display that item content. So this is a great way to kind of do a sprint review with your teams where you can look at each story individually, go through it, see the before, and then see the after and talk about, does this look right? Are we missing anything? Do we need to take this and decompose it down even further? Have all those discussions because, again, those visuals really drive those discussions. On top of viewing the individual user stories here, you can actually do what we call a walkthrough. And this is where I'm going to just grab some real estate. This is where you're actually able to walk through the entire process. So down here, I've got the process itself. You can see here that I've kind of got the step before, which is nothing because we're at the start of the process. So initially, we're going to start off with displaying those 10 most recently viewed. And I can actually go full screen mode here. So again, a great way to do sprint reviews with your teams to gather feedback. So you can go through here and see, okay, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to display my top 10 most recently viewed. I have those 3 choices of the different things I could do here, if you remember. So let's say I want to go ahead and open an item. I can see the visual that goes along with that. I can see my user story up here and my system response. And then the last step, again, was to do the log out. So again, and you can go back and forth. This is a very, very simple process for demonstration purposes, but I think you can see it would be very powerful. The other great thing about this is as you're going along doing the sprint reviews, we have the capability over here in our utility panel to actually capture any discussions or changes that you might want to make to this process along the way. Simply by starting a new discussion, we can say that, we might need to change a page, whatever you might want to put there. You can post that comment, and now you've got it attached to this process so you know that you need to go in and make a change to that particular piece. So I'm going to pause there. I don't know if we're going to wait till the end for questions, but I always like to pause there. Okay, we'll just keep going for now. The last great thing about this process is you can actually generate test cases off of it. So coming up here, we can actually generate a test case for this entire process. And it actually looks like we can go ahead and pull that up here. Again, it just ends up an Excel spreadsheet where, again, we've got that marketing page defined here. We've got our inputs and our expected results. So this would be our tasks and our system responses. If you remember, there were 3 different kind of user options that they could go through. So what that results in is 3 possible paths through that particular process, which means we have 3 tests for that particular process. And then we have the individual steps for each of those tests. So again, very simplified process for demo purposes. But if you think about it, you know, if you had a really complex process with a lot of different branches, your testers having to sit down and think about, you know, what are all the different paths that I need to test? This generation of the test plan will lay it all out for them so that they're able to see it without having to spend time to sit down and think it all through. It will just generate it for them. And then again, for each of the different inputs and system responses, if you have any other linked requirements, they would show up over here in the references section so that you'd be able to see how you might have a business requirement linked into these individual steps. So again, once you've generated all of the individual user stories here, what you end up with is what we call a user story artifact. And so we could take a look at that. And so here what I have is this is going to be my open an item. This is the wrong. And here what I've got, again, is my story points, my priority, my testing status. This is something that I just added, my test status here. And then I've got things like my user story title, my acceptance criteria. I've also actually mapped in a couple of other additional business rules here and some non-functionals. So that's something else that you're able to do as well. Very quickly and easy being able to pull these in and associating them to the user story. And then what I like to say here is, you know, if you've got a really diligent developer who's very interested in this information, they can actually come in here and use what I call our impact analysis. And this is where they're able to go through and take this particular user story and see everything else that it's connected to. So here we can see we've got a lot of different things going on, but we can see that we had that business rule that's attached here. These different process tasks. So this was that system task coming in, the precondition of displaying the top 10 most recently viewed, our open an item user task, and display item content or system task. So those are all in here as well. Here again, we've got the ability to attach those non-functionals, and it's calling out that it's a dark blue here. That's because it's actually from, again, that enterprise standards project that we referenced earlier. So anything that's a reference to a different project shows up as blue. So we pulled those 2 NFRs in from our enterprise standards project. From here, we could see that open an item, again, was tied to that marketing page process. That marketing page process was tied to our mobile advisor app process, that 10,000-foot view. From there, we can see that it's tied back to our original portfolio epic. And actually, we can come in here and we can see all the different values that are associated to that portfolio epic. We can also see that this entire application is tied to an information model. So here's where we've actually got our database defined. So these would be the tables that we would be using in reference to this particular application. So you're able to pull in all that really great information, link it all in here, and the developer can get a really great view of everything that's going on. The other place that I like to use that impact analysis is when we come over to that login policy, if you remember that. So for example, let's say that we want to actually make a change to this login process. Ideally, what would happen is up front, before you do any changes to code at all, you would come in here and do your impact analysis and see what else it might be tied to. Again, because we're hoping that it's going to be getting reused. So again, here we can see it's tied not only to our mobile advisor app, but to our new mortgage application. Again, that blue line indicates that it's from a different project. And so what I can do right here is actually click on this particular new mortgage application icon, And now what I can do is start a discussion with the stakeholder for that project. And we can say we want a mobile advisor app wants to change the login process. Let's meet to discuss. So I can reach out to Bob, that stakeholder, right within the application itself. And when I post that, it's actually going to send an email to Bob. And here we can see there's the email. So here's the note to Bob that we just saw. Here's a link to the actual artifact itself that you can click on to open it up, and a picture or a visual indication of what that artifact is if it does have a visual component. And so the great thing about this is when Bob responds to this email, maybe with some suggestions of what he's going to allow or not allow, we have what we call our email-enabled discussion. So his response will get pulled out of email, what I like to call automagically, and then put back onto this new mortgage application discussion panel without him having to do anything extra. So if you think about all the different times that you've sent out a Word document or sent out an email about a change that you want to make, and there's some back and forth in the email discussions about timing or decisions or maybe architectural impacts, and you go to make your change, and then 6 months down the road, you're like, why did I do it that way? All of those conversations and decisions are lost in email. With our email-enabled discussions, once you've sent out that link, any conversations that go back and forth are going to be pulled out and retained back on the artifact itself, so you always have that history of all the decisions that were made. So once you've gone through and you've built out kind of your first initial pass of what you want to do for this mobile advisor app, you can actually build what we call a rapid review. So a rapid review is a great way to pull everything together. And what you would do with that is actually pull together what we call a collection. And I can show you that here quickly. So you build a collection would be the first thing you'd do. And you would select the contents of your collection. And really, it's just a way to group everything together so you can view it very easily. And then you can actually create that rapid review. And what that does is it builds this URL, which you can then email out to your teams. And so what I've got here is one ready to go. So I'm going to assume that, Bob initially initiated this request to build out the mobile advisor app. So we want him to be on our rapid review. So he would sign in. And then what he would get is this document-like interface where he can look through and see all of the different artifacts associated to our sprint review. So this is, the initial kind of whiteboard of what we were doing. Here's some, some high-level business process documents. And then again, we've got some feature artifacts and, again, all of our different Storyteller processes. And so the great thing about this is anybody can come in here that's on the review and provide their feedback in a very quick and easy way. So they would just click on the discussions panel. And so here we can say, from Bob, like the addition of the login, and we can post that. And then if we went back in and looked at Mobile Advisor app, we'll see that comment posted there. And here's the comment from Bob. So again, your teams can all collaborate in a very easy way. You can send out that rapid review to all of your different teams. And so if you have somebody that's in another time zone, 6 hours ahead or 12 hours ahead, they can look at that rapid review, provide all their feedback on all the different artifacts. And again, it all gets captured here within the repository so that you can go back through and take a look at it. And as far as the discussions go, you can actually have chains here. So if I respond to Bob, it will actually add a chain to that original comment. So you can have several different thread-like conversations. So now we can see this chain has one response, right? So we can get rid of some of the clutter and you can just see the different kind of threads that go along with it. So again, it's a great way to collaborate without necessarily having to be in the same room. On top of all that, we like to talk about how we integrate in with our other ALM tools. So I had hoped to have an HP integration here for you. It didn't quite work out. So what I'm actually going to show you is a Jira integration. So for example, we can take a look at this open an item. And we can see, I'm actually going to go a little step further. So from our marketing page, just to dive in a little bit more, if we remember that our 3 key items here were open items, search for content, select presentation mode. And so what I always like to say is for each of these high-level items, can you decompose it even more, either horizontally within the process or going, vertically and deeper into this. So in this case, we went a little bit deeper. And here's where we're able to actually take that and say, all right, when I come into my marketing page and I open an item, I select an item, but what I need to note here is that depending on the item type, my system response is going to be different, right? So we're actually able to capture multiple different system responses to the same user interaction. And so that's where we have here, I'll display a document and I'll play a webcast and I'll play a video. So that's all captured here. So now let's say I generate the user story associated to that, which is here. And again, I've got my user story, my acceptance criteria, which accounts for all of the different ways that the system is going to react to what's being selected. And then what happens is this is going to sync over into, let's say, a Jira project. And here it is here. So we've got this particular Jira project. Again, we can see it's got the fully fleshed out acceptance criteria. I've got my story points. That's all there. I'm in progress. And what we can do is set up bi-directional integrations with whatever ALM tools that you might want to integrate in with. So whether it's HP or Micro Focus, or if it's Jira, version 1, TFS, whatever you want to use, you can say what you want to be synchronized bi-directionally or potentially one way only, either from Storyteller to your ALM tool or from your ALM tool back to Storyteller or both ways. And so what might happen in this particular case is the developer gets this and it sees all the different things that you're trying to do here, playing a video, playing a webcast, opening a document. And then your developer has a question. And they say, well, what about if I want to play a sound clip? Right? So when they post that question, what happens is it actually, without them having to leave Jira, will send that comment back over into Storyteller. And here we can see that comment. And so this is where Storyteller can help you really react very quickly to what you might have going on in your Agile projects. So let's say we're close to the end of our sprint. We don't have the ability to take some extra time to write some code to actually write and test, to do the playing of the sound clip. So what we've decided to do, and what our analyst has responded back with is, for now, we're just going to add an error message, and then we're going to create a CR to do the work for playing the sound clip. And so then what I would do is come back into my open an item. I would come down here and I would add an additional step where I'm actually going to display invalid type in this particular case. And then I've actually created, again, that change request to play that sound clip, right? So I've got this, I've got a priority on it, and now I can go through and prioritize it to wherever it might fit in the next set of upcoming sprints. And then once that's implemented, we can actually take this change request, attach it back down into our open an item process, come down here and change this from displaying invalid error type to actually playing the sound clip. And again, that all gets generated. You've got the inner tool conversations going on, and you're able to handle your change requests in a very smooth and easy way. So again, I'm going to just pause really quick there to see if there's any other questions.
So,
go ahead, Dominic.
So, Susan, I see Dennis here is asking a question for clarification. That Excel spreadsheet, is it auto-generated?
Yes. From whichever process you want to generate it from. So, for example, if I want to generate it off this, let's say the login process. Here, you would come up here to generate test cases. You would search for your process, select it, click generate test cases. What happens then is it kicks off a job so that you can continue to do other work while that's running in the background. And then we can come over here to the jobs and see that it's completed. And then you can download it and open it up. So you probably just need to kind of reformat it to spread out here. But again, you can see that this is all attached in here. Let's do, there we go. And that's how you would do that. And then again, we can see that, again, those references to those other functional requirements that we had for the user ID and for the password, again, are also referenced here. It's a great question. Any other questions?
There's a question here. We have a legacy system. How can Storyteller help?
So again, where we talked about before is with our really rich import capabilities, we can take Excel spreadsheets and import them in. You can also create customized artifacts for all of the different metadata items that you want to track. That might be in those particular spreadsheets, and create custom artifacts out of that. So when you import everything in, you don't have to lose any of that custom data that you have defined. We also have what we call Blue Docs, and what that does is it will take a Word document and convert it into individual artifacts. So you can take that and it will put it in the hierarchy that you have within your original Word document. And what that will do then is look at each of the different kind of lines that you have in your Word document and just try to define or decide what type of artifact it is. Is it a use case? Is it a mock-up? Is it just a textual requirement? And it builds all that, again, in that same exact format that you have in the Word document. So really great ways to get you jump-started on your projects. And again, the story scan option, which will actually take your individual test plans and create these storyteller processes out of that. It's a very linear process that gets created, but you're able to, get about 80% of the way there and getting a jump start on your project.
We have another question. We are heavily regulated. How can Storyteller help me stay in compliance? Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that we do that. First of all, we have a partnership with a company that we call UCM, I believe. And so what they do is they provide a whole set of canned regulatory compliance artifacts that are ready to go for your particular area. For example, I believe I have one in here. So I think this one should have something around healthcare. Again, so you have all different kinds of authority documents, your controls. They all come in here with a bunch of different breakdowns to all the different regulatory compliance areas that you might need to address. And then you're able to take these and link them in to your individual projects, to the artifacts that they might relate to prove that you've actually addressed these regulatory rules. And again, you've got that traceability and that auditability from start to finish on your projects to ensure that you have everything fully covered. We also have the ability to do things like they give you a trace matrix to actually show you that all of your requirements have been satisfied and link to something else so that you know you've met those needs. And I'm looking here, it's a question here, how does Storyteller fit into DevOps? Okay, so one of the ways that we can do that here is we talk about the DevOps chain. And what we've been hearing about in our industry is the fact that, a lot of times there's a lot of focus on automation when we talk about DevOps. There's a lot of focus on being able to quickly respond and adapt. And this is where we feel that Storyteller can help in a bunch of different ways. So number one, we are keeping teams more closely aligned with the business. So when we look at things like, your ALM tools, and a lot of people are trying to do things via just user stories and maybe still attaching Word documents in there, but there's nothing that can give you that full and complete picture of how everything fits together. So this is where we can actually give that to you, where we can say, you've got this mobile advisor app. We're allowing you to decompose it into smaller pieces. What Storyteller does in a lot of this, and what I find when I actually use Storyteller myself to model out sample content for some of our clients, is that it helps you to really think about how you want to break something down. Like when I look at your marketing page, I might think about, how far do I want to break this down?
do I want to separate things? I'm constantly thinking about reuse. Is this something that could be reused? And let's break it out into a separate process. So it is something that I can then pull in later in and of itself. It really helps you to think that way analytically, so you're saving some time up front for your development teams and also for your business teams, right? So this is something you can do collaboratively with your business teams. And it's something that when you put it together in a process like this, it's much easier for them to understand than looking at a bunch of user stories here. I always like to say this, your stakeholders don't want to look at user stories. They can't get the big picture. So for the processes that I've shown you, this is the user story representation for those, and you can see how this is just not going to match what they can see with this view marketing page process and then maybe this open item process. That you can clearly see how things fit together. Again, it's that big picture. It's something that you can look at and easily understand. It's something that translates across all of your teams. And so what that does is it does speed your time to market and your BusDevOps cycle because you're doing much more of that work up front. The other way that we like to say with this is with our rich integrations, you can take something like these properties in the user story, and we can add in here, a release. So you could add a property here that shows your Jenkins release or your build number, right? And then what you can do is you can indicate when that's gone out to production, right? So you can have an indication to say this is the build where it actually went out in production. Or this is, it's currently in release testing, or it's currently in UAT. A lot of those different statuses can be tracked and synced back in with your Jira tools if you want, so that what you're able to do is give a good indication of when was my user story implemented. And then as I implement my set of user stories that feeds into that higher capability of the marketing page, your business stakeholders have that view into exactly where things are. So in my marketing page, I had, however many these 4 different user stories. If all 4 of them are implemented, that means my marketing page capability is ready to go. And then for my marketing page capability, we can have indicators on there to say, back to the Mobile Advisor app, on my Mobile Advisor app, how many of these key capabilities over here are completed, right? And we can add properties up here at the top to track exactly where we are. So we could have a property here that says complete, stories in progress, whatever you wanted to do. So we can automatically have those feed all the way through.
There's another question. Oh, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Dominic.
There was another question here asking about the different products that Storyteller integrates with, and I think that's linked into the DevOps question. I know that you said there was an issue with trying to set up the demo with I guess the Micro Focus ALM. But if we were connected to, because this group is Micro Focus, and so what would be the things that we would connect to or see through Storyteller, and how does Storyteller help bridge some of those gaps? Say if we're in a mixed environment where some teams are working on agile methodologies and other teams are working on waterfall methodologies. How can we kind of bridge that gap where some are in a tool that's doing like a waterfall method, where other teams might be in TFS, some teams might be in Jira? How can we bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, so you have a bunch of different ways that you can do that. I know a lot of companies do have, different teams using different tools. So, and that's certainly, doable. It's just some extra mapping that you need to do. So what Blueprint does is it uses a tool that we call TaskTop. And what that does is it allows you to, it's an integration tool that connects to many, many different tools. So that's what we use. So basically, we set up an integration from Blueprint using TaskTop into HP ALM or Micro Focus ALM or Jira or TFS. So you would define what projects you want to be in here. So here's, again, was just trying to create a test user story here. So again, you could have it where you actually have things like your priorities and your story points going back and forth, maybe your status. And then what happens is if you change it on one side, it will update and change on the other. So this might be how a user story, and again, you can define these user stories with whatever properties you want in any of these products pretty much. Most of them are pretty configurable. And then you just say what you want to go which way or both ways. And just for example, so here's a mapping of how you would do that. And so here's what you do is you pick your mapping to go back and forth. And that's, I was trying to test that earlier, which is why I had to change the name of the one story because it did sync back and forth. So that's exactly how you would do it, is you would set up what you want to sync. And then each time a change is made, there's no copying back and forth. It's just every, say, 30 seconds, we'll check to see if there's a change and then send it, wherever it needs to go from whatever side. So it's very, very easy. So we can set that up with whatever TaskTop integrates with, and TaskTop integrates with pretty much everything, any of the major players. And then again, anything that we don't automatically sync with via TaskTop, we have an API that you can access to do any custom integrations that you might need. The last thing to mention here, too, that I don't think that we got to, and speaking to some of the DevOps stuff, too, is our analytics. So I did touch on that briefly in the platform slide, but just to call out, too, that we do provide you with an analytics database that has all kinds of analytic data, which you can then take and put into your analytic tool of choice. In this case, I'm just showing you something that was created in Power BI, where you can actually track, again, the status of your user stories, anything that might be high risk, status of user story coverage, tracking your artifact creation. So, where are we creating all these artifacts, and are we creating enough of them? Here, again, we've got something around the number of artifacts versus traces, and this is key because you want to make sure that you're not creating an overly huge amount of traces, but you also want to make sure that you want to make sure that they're there for each of the different artifacts. So really great and rich information that you can then take and customize these dashboards for whatever information that you want to track for your teams. And again, this would be, in some ways different from what you might build out of a Jira, like a burn-up chart or anything like that, because you can tie it back in, again, like I said, to your higher level capabilities. One thing to note, too, is I think a lot of times people get confused between what does Storyteller do and what does my ALM and testing tool do. So just to clarify there, we work in conjunction with those tools. We're not trying to be a task tracking tool. We're not trying to be a testing tool. But we know that it's very important to tie in that whole requirements piece, right, to everything else that you have to do in your SDLC lifecycle. So testing is important. Your task management is important. So we want to make it as easy as possible to take your business requirements and hook into those existing tools that you might have. Not trying to be disruptive, but trying to actually make what you do in those tools better and allow you to do things in them faster. So one way we like to think of it is, you have your code repository, you have your testing repository. You really should have a business repository that goes along with that.
So thank you so much, Susan. I'm just going to stay right here for a second. If someone has a question about the live demo before we switch back to the presentation. So if you have a question related to something that Susan can demonstrate for you, otherwise we're going to move back to the presentation deck. All right. I think, Susan, we can go back to the presentation deck.
Okay. There you go. We can probably advance it there.
Awesome. So just a little bit of housekeeping as well to wrap this up. We do have, join us on the Discover, the new tour. Here we have 14 different locations over 4 weeks. And we're going to be in places like London, Paris, Dubai, DC, Toronto, New York, Singapore, Tokyo, Mumbai. So catch that tour. Check out the Vivit page, Vivit Worldwide. And I want to say a very special thank you to our presenter, Susan Dangelo. You've really covered a lot of information about Blueprint and how it integrates and how it bridges the gap, how we can take that card, that artifact, remind ourselves to communicate about it, collaborate on the chat sessions, on the discussion threads, and how all of that can be in one place for us to confirm what it is we're doing so we can build better systems and have better craftsmanship. As far as the surveys are concerned, are we going to push those again? I don't think we have that, but I think we pushed them during the presentation. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Susan, a very wonderful presentation, probably one of the best presentations I've ever attended with the live demo as well. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please communicate with the Agile Special Interest Group. Let us know what you're looking for, what you're interested in, and how we can bring presenters like Susan to answer those types of questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.